In this video, I rank every single Minecraft update in the Microsoft era. The lineup of updates is pretty exciting, and without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Alright, we're doing another tier list today. It's about goddamn time I did another one. After the last one did so well, I was thinking, oh, I should probably do some more tier lists, but you get carried away and ended up doing other things. But here we are doing another tier list, and today we're going to be ranking every single Minecraft update since the Microsoft era. And just before we get started, I just want to remind you, if you want to get sort of more involved with my community and have a cool place to hang out, then be sure to join my Discord server. I co-own it with my streamer friend, Grim Gaming. It's a whole bunch of fun, and it's a great place to hang out, so link in description if you want to join. But without further ado, we should probably get to ranking these things, or we're going to be here all day. So the first major update to Minecraft since Microsoft bought the game was the combat update. Oh boy, we get to start with some spicy controversy. So the combat update was very, it was received on a sort of black and white scale. You either loved it or you hated it. Minecraft's combat mechanics hadn't been changed or touched up until this point, so when it suddenly just got completely revamped, it's kind of understandable that a lot of people weren't too happy. Myself being a very, very, very old Minecraft player, I was not really accustomed or a big fan of the new changes right off the bat. The combat update changed how combat works by changing it to where instead of spamming your attacks like you would normally, you have to wait for this like little sword thing to charge up whenever you're swinging at things, and then you do the full damage. Swords pretty much became obsolete since axes got changed to now swing slower, but do a ton more damage. This was also the update that added shields, as well as end cities and the elytra, pretty much the end game of Minecraft nowadays. So it's fair to say that this was a pretty big update with a lot of changes, but how many of those changes were actually that good? I'm ranking these updates on my own opinions, but I also want to be objective about some things. The combat update being one of those things where I want to be as open as possible to the changes that were made. I think Minecraft's combat definitely needed some tweaking and some improvements, but I really don't know if this was the way to go about doing it because the combat just feels slower and less, I don't know, less exciting now. At least that's how I feel about it. Also, shields are way too OP. Literally just point your shield at something, block, and then you're pretty much invincible. So I don't really know how to feel about that either. I think the end cities and the sort of end island addition to the end, I think that was fantastic. I think the end definitely needed some touch-ups. And of course the elytra, which, unlike a lot of people, I'm actually not a big fan of the elytra. It's not the way it controls or anything like that. I just think that flight or anything along the lines of that should be left to creative mode. I think that's where flight in any form belongs. I think the elytra is just way too game-breaking and kind of makes a lot of normal Minecraft tasks feel trivial once you get it. And you can make the argument that, oh, you do all those trivial tasks to get the elytra. I mean, like, yeah, I get that, but I feel like once you get the elytra, you already have, like, max gear and all that stuff like that. It's like, at that point, you don't feel like there's much more you need to do, and that's kind of why I have a distaste for the elytras, because it kind of feels like, oh, I have this now, I can do anything, why bother playing anymore? However, overall, I think the combat update is a very, very good update. I'm gonna give the combat update a solid B tier. Next update on our list is the quote-unquote Frostburn update. This was the update that added magma blocks and polar bears, those being the main features anyway. I believe it also added the little igloos you could find out in the snow biome. This was kind of one of those, like, I like to call them fake updates, where they just sort of add a couple features, be like, yeah, it's an update, yeah, there you go, but it's not really an update. I don't really have too much to say about this update. I mean, I like the addition of magma blocks, especially when we get to update aquatic. It adds the ability to sort of get sucked down into the water and also refill your breath. So I think magma blocks are an excellent addition, but polar bears, like, they're just kind of there. You don't really do anything with them. You can't really tame them, and they don't really drop anything too useful. I mean, they exist, and that's cool, but beyond that, they don't really do a whole lot. But overall, I think this update's like I'm gonna say this update's like a D tier. It's the magma blocks were cool, and that's what sort of kept it from going any lower, but it didn't really add a whole lot. And if polar bears had more to them, like if there was more purpose for them to serve, like if I were to give the polar bears a purpose, I would say maybe be able to shear them and get like polar bear fur, which would like allow you to make like sort of fur armor, and I think that could have been a really cool thing. But yeah, overall pretty update, Next up, we got the exploration update, which is a bit more chunky, had a bit more content to offer. This is the update that added shulker boxes, and oh man, I do love me some shulker boxes. Makes transporting things and just inventory space so much more manageable. Inventory in general needs a whole update, I think, but that'll have to come later. This is also the update that added woodland mansions, one of the rarest, but also one of the most highly coveted structures in Minecraft. The addition of shulker boxes immediately puts this update to like an A for me, but let's examine the woodland mansions just a little bit closer to see if it really deserves that title. Woodland mansions are massive structures, like they are huge. I think they might be the biggest in the game, maybe barring some super mega end city if you're lucky, I don't know. But they're huge, they're massive, they're full of pillagers and evokers and stuff like that. And they're full of treasure too, great place to get some quick emeralds off some pillagers. Also, all the structures on the inside are so intricately well built and sort of have a lot of story implications. I mean, you'd sort of be like, you know, Minecraft doesn't really have a story, and you'd be kind of stretching it to say that the woodland mansion like structures have a story. Looking at you, MatPat, wink wink. But I think it just adds a lot more to the mob side of things, because, you know, up until this point, it's sort of always been about the player, except maybe villagers maybe, and giving more life to the existing mobs that have intelligence is pretty cool, I think. I think it's a great way of doing world building. Overall, I'm a pretty big fan of this update. I'm gonna say it's a solid A tier. Next up, we got the World of Color update, which is, I don't really want to call this one a fake update, but it's kind of in the general same realm as the Frostburn update. This update added quote-unquote colorful blocks, such as concrete, changing how terracotta looks, adding the glazed terracotta, and also added parrots, which are, well, they're a favorite. I'd say parrots are a pretty favorite mob. I'm a little bit of a sucker for this update purely because I added concrete. Minecraft was in dire need of just solid color blocks. Terracotta wasn't exactly cutting it, in my opinion. And I think the concrete did it like really well and opened up a whole bunch of creative opportunities for builders. I'm not a huge builder, but I can really get into a building mood and just go nuts with creations and just sort of build until I feel satisfied with it. So I think as an update that added creative opportunity and cute little parrots, I'd say this is a high B. I'd say this is a high B update. I'd say right above the combat update, honestly. Oh boy, time for update aquatic. Coral reefs, fish becoming actual mobs, new kinds of fish, tridents, drowned, all sorts of new underwater structures, kelp. I mean, what's not to love about this update? I figure we might as well start with the biggest elephant in the room, which is tridents. I think tridents are a great addition. I think they synergize very well with Minecraft's, you know, current combat after the combat update. You can throw them, you can use them as an actual hands-on weapon, and, you know, you have the two different enchantments that sort of decide your path of how you want to use it. But the addition of tridents and how they work move perfectly with the ocean monuments, which were added, I believe, right before Microsoft acquired the rights to Minecraft. And tridents are just so much fun to use in ocean temples. It almost feels wrong to enter an ocean temple without a trident of some sort, be it with loyalty or riptide. But that's not the only thing this update added. Let's talk about the other things. Fish becoming actual mobs that you can either kill to get fish or scoop up in buckets. I think that's a great just little addition. Was it necessary? No, but I think it added a lot more to the water. Coral reefs and kelp and all the new ocean structures. The oceans were in a massive need of some love, and this update just did it perfectly. I personally love the coral reefs, and every time I play Minecraft now, I have to build an axolotl tank with coral blocks because it's just such a fun thing to do, and the amount of building opportunity and creative ideas that can be blossomed forth from the coral reefs and all the different blocks they offer is just immense. I think the drowned were also a pretty cool addition. You know, they're not too dangerous, but if you get swarmed by a bunch of them, you're gonna be in trouble. And this update added conduits, which are basically underwater beacons. So that's really useful if you have like an underwater base or just want water powers around your base. Overall, I think this update is freaking fantastic. I'm gonna put this, I think this is an easy S tier, honestly. Now let's talk about the village and pillage update. A fact I heard about this update, not recently, but a while ago, was that Minecraft was hesitant to use the word pillage because of the definition of the word and what it sort of implies. But the fact that they went with it anyway shows that they were really like passionate about this update. Like they were sure like, oh yeah, it needs to be called village and pillage. This update revamped how villages work and how villagers work. It added the bamboo forests, which were awesome. Updated a bunch of textures, raids, all that good stuff. I think this update has a lot of ups, and I think it also has quite a few downs as well. And some of the ups can also be counted as downs, depending on how you look or feel about it. So let's start off by talking about raids. I think the idea of raids is really cool, having your village sort of come under attack by a bunch of pillagers and their army. It sort of adds more excitement for all those people who enjoy Minecraft's combat and are like big fighters and not so much builders. There's also a lot of cool drops you can get from the raid, such as the Ravagers can drop saddles if you haven't been lucky enough to find one, Totems of Undying, which are completely broken. Villagers themselves drop emeralds, so if you get yourself a looting sword, you're pretty much in business. Raids can be a little annoying if you're like not a big fan of fighting, or if you're just like under-geared or not prepared for one. Dealing with Vexes and Evokers and Ravagers is just such a pain if you're not properly prepared for it. But yeah, there's ups and downs to raids. I think they're a cool addition, but they can be a bit annoying if you're sort of not in the right circumstance to handle one. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid update. I'm gonna give it a... I'm gonna give it a low A. I think a low A feels right. Time to talk about the bees! This is another one of those sort of like quote-unquote fake updates that Mojang just sort of sprinkled in there as like, hey, here's bees, have fun. But they added more to nature in the forest, and like, yeah, they're not the most useful thing in the world. I mean, they can be useful. Their honey is a great food source, and it gets rid of poison, I'm pretty sure. But going about getting it and sort of the work you have to put in to mass produce anything out of bees, it's a lot, it's a lot. But if you want to see how to really have fun with bees, then I suggest you go watch Bothy's video where he defeats the Wither with an army of bees. I mean, that's just hilarious. Like, killing the most strong enemy in the game with bees. I mean, it's just a kick in the balls. But yeah, I mean, bees, you know, they're there and honey exists, but that's pretty much it. I don't think it's a bad update, but I don't think it's the most exciting update. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a C tier. I think C tier feels right. Oh boy, time for another big one. The Nether update. The update most people, a lot of people were waiting for. The Nether was in dire need of love and polish and rework, and this update certainly accomplished that. New biomes, new terrain generation, new structures, even in the overworld with the ruined portals. Amazing update, and it was absolutely necessary. However, and there's always a however, there is one thing in this update that I have a massive problem with. And that, my dear friends, is the addition of netherite. Now, you might start screaming in your chair and being like, oh, he doesn't like netherite, he thinks it's too OP, I'm disliking the video, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. Shut up and let me talk. I get it. The vast majority likes netherite because it's strong, it gives you better tools, better armor, etc., whatever. But it's too strong and too easy to get. Now you might think, oh, it's not that easy to get. Oh, I disagree. Literally just set up a sheep farm, go to the nether with some beds, and just blow up until you find all the ancient debris you need. Even Mojang themselves thought netherite was too OP. And in the most recent Trails and Tales update, they made it way, way, way more difficult to get netherite. You now have to go to a bastion and find these like netherite patterns or something. I don't really know the name of them. I don't really keep up with updates too much anymore. But you have to go to a bastion and like find these patterns to make a single piece of netherite gear because it just wasn't balanced before. When netherite came out and up until the most recent update, it was extremely unbalanced and way too overpowered. You could get netherite on day one if you sped run it. I think that diamonds should always have stayed as the endgame material for Minecraft, and we can sort of tie this back into the Village and Pillage update. I don't think villagers should sell diamond gear. I think that's way too overpowered. And yeah, you can make the argument that like, oh, it's just to add more content. And yeah, it's more free content, and no one can complain about free content, even though I'm doing it right now. But I think that netherite just breaks Minecraft's difficulty and survival elements to the point where they're pretty much non-existent. You get full netherite with Prot 4 and Feather Falling and all that, you're basically invincible. But I get it. The devs wanted to add a stronger material than diamond, and yeah, I love having a netherite pickaxe because I can mine for significantly longer and get more stuff. I think that's good, but the armor, I think the armor is the biggest offender here, is way too strong. And people, you just can't kill someone with full netherite unless you yourself also have full netherite and are just more skilled at combat. We can sit here all day shouting about netherite, how OP it is, be it for good or bad. But the reality is, it's still in the game, and it's not going anywhere. But moving on from netherite, that's not the only thing that the Nether update added, obviously. It added a whole bunch of other stuff. I love that in the soul sand valleys, there are massive bone ribs, just tons of bone blocks for you to harvest to either, you know, do crops or trees or whatever. I think that is great. You can use them for that, or you could just use them to build. The fact that there are new biomes in the Nether, the Crimson Forest, the Warped Forest, Soul Sand Valleys, and the classic Nether Wastes, I think that's great. And I think the advancement for exploring each of the biomes, I think that's a really cool idea for an advancement. It's like, hey, you've been to every new location in this place. Good job. Pat on the back for you, kiddo. The Bastion structures, new dungeons to raid. I mean, people are always looking for more dungeons to raid and more enemies to fight, which is really cool. The respawn anchor, finally having a way to set your spawn in the frickin' Nether for whenever you die a million times, that was 100% necessary. This update is so massive and it added so much stuff to the game. I think barring the whole netherite situation, it's an excellent update. And I'm gonna give the Nether update a... I'm feeling a low S. Low S feels right. Oh boy, time to talk about caves and cliffs. So anyone that kept up with the Caves and Cliffs updates knows that the update was split into 3 updates. No one can say otherwise. It was split into 3 updates. Not 2, 3. The hype build for this update was massive. People have been wanting a cave update for so long. And the initial presentation on Minecraft Live back in, like, I don't know what year it was, but the features they showed off, the new cave generations, the lush caves, oh my god. People were so excited, including myself. But that was kind of the biggest fault of this update. A lot of hype was built. And, I mean, they delivered on what they said they were going to deliver, but they didn't do it when they said they were going to do it. Caves and Cliffs Part 1 just added all the new blocks and a few new creatures. It didn't add any new structures or biome generation. It was just like, hey, here's the new items and the new toys for you to play with, but you can't exactly get them how we intended you to. So, you know, it was like a tease update. And then Part 2 added the new world generation, which, oh my god, fantastic. The new world generation is beautiful. The new way mountains generate and the new way caves generate, it was 100% needed. I mean, caves were just so boring before, and now they're just so much more exciting and fun to explore. You could get lost for hours in the new caves. And then Caves and Cliffs Part 3, also known as the Wild Update, added the one thing that people have been waiting forever for. The Deep Dark and the Warden. That is the one thing people were most excited for because it was like, whoa, what is this? The fact that we saw a guy getting completely obliterated by the Warden with full netherite gear goes to show, hey, that's not gonna protect you here. And people were so hype for the Warden and the Deep Dark. Like, everybody was excited for it. But the problem is, they didn't release it when they said they were gonna release it, so by the time it came out, everyone sort of forgot, and then it was like, oh yeah, it's there, look, it's there, cool. And then that was pretty much it. But yeah, the biggest problem with the Caves and Cliffs for me is that too much hype was built, and the time of delivery was way past when the hype was still alive. A lot of the hype had died by the time all the features were finally implemented, and I feel like that was the biggest fault of this update. Don't get me wrong, the content that was added was very cool, except stuff like copper, because copper is freaking useless. But the geodes, the new cave generation, deep slate, I love building with deep slate. All of that's so cool, and I love the lush caves as well. So overall, Caves and Cliffs, parts 1, 2, and 3, I think is a very solid high A tier update. I feel like it could have hit S tier if everything released at once, but again, too much hype was built, and promises weren't delivered. Now to talk about the Wild update. This was the update that introduced swamps, frogs, allays, and the Deep Dark. So it's basically just Caves and Cliffs Part 3. And it did add swamps and chest boats and new types of wood, which, you know, more building opportunity, always good. But ever since the update came out, I've never really found myself seeking out these new blocks. I don't know, I've never felt excited whenever I found a swamp. I was like, oh, mangrove swamp, cool, move on. Also, I have a grudge against this update. A massive grudge. This update was supposed to have the addition of fireflies and a reworked birch forest. It was supposed to have it. They showed off concept art and they said, oh yeah, these are some of the things that you could be seeing. And then they said, oh no, we never said that was happening. My grudge against this update is so huge because they were supposed to add fireflies, which I was so excited for because fireflies would be a perfect addition to Minecraft. But they didn't add them because frogs eat them and that poisons them. Mojang, I'm gonna level with you for a second. You do understand that you could have coded the frogs not to eat the fireflies, right? You understand you could have done that. You have full control over what goes of this game. And if you make the argument that it's not realistic or anything along those lines, when has Minecraft ever been realistic? Frogs are one step away from a demon to me because they are the reason fireflies were never added. And I will never forgive Mojang for that. I seriously don't understand. Like, sure, yes, frogs eat fireflies in real life and it poisons them. You don't have to code that into the game. You don't have to do that. Honestly, it is beyond me why they couldn't just not do that and still add fireflies. Fireflies would be the single perfect addition to make nighttime even more amazing in this game. It irks me. It irks me so bad. I literally cannot describe the rage. But moving past that, this update was extremely mid, in my opinion. Most of the features in it were supposed to be out a year or two before this update even came out. Chest boats are pretty cool. I think those are neat. But beyond that, I mean, this update really didn't have too much new stuff to offer. And considering that fact, I'm giving the wild update an E tier. Alright, final and most recent update, Trails and Tales. The last and most recent update of the Microsoft era, the Trails and Tales update. What does this beautiful, amazing update have to offer us, the players? Armor trims, hanging signs, camels, new wood, bookcases, new trees. Pretty much it. Okay, obviously I'm being unfair here, but I feel like this update could have offered a lot more. It felt extremely small, and seeing as Mojang was kind of building a little bit of hype for it, it felt extremely underwhelming. The Sniffer is a mob I will never use in my life. If it's there, maybe, but like, it's never something I'm going to seek out. Camels, also never something I'm going to seek out. Sure, cool to have two players riding on the same animal, but like, I don't have friends. I'll just ride a horse. I do think the bookcases that you can actually put books in, I think that was a really cool, nice aesthetic addition. Could make for some really interesting enchanting rooms. Also, cherry trees, also something I think fits very well into Minecraft. Back when I ran my own server, I had a mod that added cherry trees and various biomes centered around them. So I think that's a good addition. Hanging signs, also pretty cool. Could make for some like interesting, like if you're making a shop or something, you could sort of put a sign out front sort of saying like, hey, this is the kind of shop it is. I get what they were going for armor trims, sort of adding more aesthetic and vanity options to the game, but I'm gonna be honest when I say they don't really look that good. Overall, this update didn't really add too much stuff. I mean, it added a bunch of like aesthetic and little things, but I don't know, for something that sold as a fully fledged Minecraft update, it was kind of disappointing. But yeah, I don't know. 1.20 was very underwhelming. I thought the day that, you know, as someone who grew up waiting for Minecraft updates, I thought that, oh man, just wait till we get to 1.20. It's going to be a crazy update. And it's really not all that crazy. It was kind of just an aesthetic like, oh, hey, here's this stuff and it's kind of just here. But again, I feel like that's being unfair because you could really say that about any Minecraft update. I think some of the additions, like I said, cherry trees, the bookcases, stuff like that, I think those were all really cool additions. But as something that's being sold as a full Minecraft update that's going to add a bunch of new content, it really didn't add too much, did it? So I think I'm going to go ahead and say that this update is low E, but not as low as the wild update, since I hold a grudge against it. So that's my final ranking for every Minecraft update in the Microsoft era. If you want to do your own ranking, there's a link to the tier list in the description below. Be sure to comment any thoughts and opinions you have down below, and with that, have a good day, everyone.